Welcome to day 7 of your 2024 30-30. Hard to believe, but a week is already under our wheels here. So the first 3 minutes, find yourselves in that really easy warm-up gear. Hopefully you've been there for a little bit, 5 to 10 minutes ahead of this one. And by easy, I mean no more than your 40% of maximum watts, or under 100 watts for pretty much everybody. Nice crisp leg speed, 90 to 100. Just beginning to bring some feet to the legs, turning it over here. We have just under 2.5 minutes to go for the warm-up before we get into the first part of our zone 2. So yes, you heard right. We get to begin day 7 with a little recovery from everything you've done over the past 6 days. You've seen how the format works now. We've got 2 high intensity days, a couple of skills days, and a couple of days where we back right off and work on this zone 2 endurance pacing. A little more talking, a little less, huffing and puffing hopefully. But settling in here, about 1.5 minutes to go, and then we'll begin our first set where we will find your watts somewhere between 50 and 60%, not quite up at 60%, but somewhere in that middle range at 90 RPM. If you can see the board here, we've got 3 minutes in that range, 50 to 60% watts, at 90 RPM, where we'll settle in. Got 1 more minute easy here, then we'll bring up the watts and chat a little bit about what exactly zone 2 is, how to find your zone 2, and why it's important. So catching your breath here, a couple of shoulder rolls back, settling your shoulders down your back, little stretch out of the wrists, and staying light on your bars. Practice engagement of that core, drawing that belly button, that center towards your spine, a little extra support for your lower back. We have more time doing zone 2 to think about our posture on the bike, so let's take advantage of that. In 15 seconds, we'll bring the watts up. So find 90 RPM now. And in 10 seconds, looking for that range 50, 55, 56%, and bring it in now. We're on for 3 minutes here. So settling with that first little bit of pressure, shouldn't feel too much, still pretty light, but it is the first pressure of the day, so it'll take a minute or so to adapt. Don't overshoot this at this point. We do want this to be an easy effort. And we're 30 seconds in, 2.5 minutes to go here before we have a little bit of movement. So just glancing down at your numbers here, make sure you're in and around that 90 RPM and not letting your power creep up. Settle your breathing. And we think about what we're doing here. And we're through 1 minute, got 2 to go. So here we are in zone 2. Potentially, you could set this gear here and ride for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, hours and hours if you had all day. And this is an important cycling adaptation, especially during these winter months, which we would call a base training season, helping your body build up some extra mitochondria, start to engage these slow twitch muscles, and using some of our fat stores for energy source as opposed to glycogen. So this is a very important step for all of us, whether we can do a little or a lot. And one more minute to go. Just riding nice and easy. You should easily be able to talk, easily be able to drink. You can move around a little bit, making sure you're nice and relaxed in your upper body, yet still engaged with those perfect pedal circles. Feeling that pedal stroke all the way around. And in 30 seconds, we make a little move, adding a tiny bit of watts to your 60%. We'll be a minute 30 there, still at 90 RPM. So this is just a gear change. That's coming up in 10 seconds. So leg speed doesn't change, just adding a tiny bit of gear. In 3, 2, 1. So let's land at that 60%, no more. Depending on your fitness level, 60% may be the high end of your zone 2. For some, it may actually tap into that low zone 3. So we don't want to exceed that here. One more minute to go here. So when we talk about zones, you hear this thrown around a lot, especially zone 2, because it's been a real darling of the training world, not just bikes, most endurance sports, or it's been around forever, but it's being talked about a lot in the last couple of years, the importance of it and why, and how exactly to be in that zone 2. We've got 30 seconds to go. In 30 seconds, we're going to stand while maintaining this cadence and this power. So standing for 30 seconds, just shifting the body, having your hands in your hoods. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Gently easing off the saddle. Using that core here. Keep yourself centered over top of your pedals. Keep those shoulders down. And you are indoors, so you can still be fairly light on your bars here. This is fully a lower body activation. 5 seconds, then back to seated. 3, 2, 1. Now we've got 2 minutes at 50 to 60% watts, so under that 60%, leg speed's up at 100. So make that adjustment now, taking a bit of gear off as you bring that leg speed up. 100 RPM, under 60%. For 2 minutes, a minute and a half left. And if you already feel like you're breathing a little too hard, be down closer to that 50%. That's the point of this. It's not to try and be max power for the range. It's to be in the right training zone for you. Coming up to that first minute. 1 more minute here. So zone 2, the way we talk about it, is one of the zones within generally a 6 to 7 zone scale, whereby zone 1 is just your general daily tasks, walking around at work, doing things around the house, easy dog walk, heart rate's pretty low, and it's just pure recovery. Zone 2 is the next level up above that. As a function of heart rate, you know your max heart rate when you're on a tag bike or your bike, it's about 60 to 70% of that. So in that range, it's not one number, it is a range. Okay, we've got a couple seconds here, then we're backing the watts right off. 1 minute easy, drop the watts right now, spin this out, still around 100 RPM, it's a good place to be. Once we're finished this minute, we're going back to the top with our 3-minute piece at 90 RPM. So everyone's under 100 watts here, maybe you're under 90, maybe you're around 80, nice and light. And I'll continue that conversation when we get back on the top here. It's how to talk our way through 30 minutes. 15 seconds. Begin to slow that leg speed down to 90 RPM. We'll move the watts in. You can see now why you want to be under 60%, so 50-55% is perfect. And let's bring those watts in now. 3, 2, 1. So 50, 55, maybe just a little bit more than that. Less than 60% at 90 RPM. We're here for 3 minutes. So when we look at this as a function of heart rate, that helps you translate to other activities. Your max heart rate on the bike is probably a little bit lower than what your max heart rate running would be. So taking that into consideration and then having that 60 to 70% as your zone 2 range. So you've got probably anywhere from 10 to 20 plus beats per minute to play around with and still be in that zone 2. When we look at zone 2 power, that is a function of your functional threshold of power. That threshold number, which at TAG, we generally say is about 75% of that max aerobic power number that you're basing your workouts off of. We're halfway through this, 90 seconds to go, steady on. So once you have that FTP number approximate, and remember again, this is a range, so it's a training range. Zone 2 would be, depending on what scale you look at, but one of the biggest generally accepted scales would have that anywhere from 55 to 70-ish% of that FTP. So you can see that is quite a big range. You're not looking to hit one specific wattage for the entire time. You have some play within that, up and down, getting higher, lower, and ideally, when we do a workout like we're doing today, where we haven't done high intensity beforehand, we can sort of pair up that heart rate and power using both metrics. Ideally, they're working symmetrically together. We've got 30 seconds to go. Then we actually move our watts up to 60% for a minute and a half, staying seated. So quick check, still around 90 RPM, still under 60%. In 10 seconds, we lift those watts right to that 60%. And 3, 2, 1. Bring the watts up just a little bit here. 60%. A minute and a half before we stand. So if my FTP is 200, my wattage training range in zone 2 is anywhere from, 105-ish up as high as 150. But depending on my fitness level, 150 may or may not push me over that heart rate zone 2, depending on how I am. And that can even be day to day, or it could be long-term fitness. Both are at play here. And we're coming up to 30 seconds left before we stand for 30. Staying at that 60%. And thinking about your body position when you stand, you're gently getting up off the saddle. You may feel that saddle nose between your legs or at your backside. That's perfect. You want to still be over top of your saddle, which means you don't want to be leaning forward on your hands. 5 seconds, we stand. 3, 2, 1. Up off the saddle. Looking up the road. Keeping those shoulders relaxed. Bending the elbows. We're not using the arms to move us. This is all about our lower body, particularly on the stationary setup. 10 seconds. Then we're back to seated. 3, 2, 1. Reduce those watts as you bring your leg speed up to 100. 50, 55%, 100 RPM. 2 minutes here. When we stand, that naturally elevates our heart rate a little bit more. So here we are trying to settle that back. A couple of deeper, slower breaths. And that nice high leg speed within that preferred cadence zone, around 100. And we're coming up to the first minute here. 1 more minute after this. Then we have our 1 minute easy and transition to part 2. 30 seconds. And when you're in this easy wattage, you can keep this leg speed nice and high, up around 100. Well, now we've got 30 seconds. I was still on a 1.5 minute mode. This is a 2-minute piece. So coming through, nice and steady. This is a great place to be if you want to do a steady state zone 2, somewhere in that 95 to 100 RPM range, 50-55%, as long as your heart rate is staying within that zone. And back it off. 1 minute easy. And settle your breathing. Part 2, we've got 6 times through, 50 seconds at your 50 to 60% watts at preferred cadence. So that's between 90 to 100, 105. So you get to choose based on how you felt up here. You might like 90, you might like 100, your choice. And then 10 seconds, we increase the cadence just enough to get us to 60%. So it's likely only a few RPMs. We're there for 10 seconds, then we just slow back down for the 50 seconds. We've got 15 seconds till we're on for this. So find that cadence of choice, and we'll move the watts in 3, 2, 1. Somewhere between 50 and 60%, but less than 60. I'm choosing to stay up around 100 RPM. That feels lighter to me. "30 seconds until our first little RPM acceleration. It's just a little bit. Watch your power. It really isn't going to be this super up acceleration. We want to nuance this one. Really feel for the bike here. We've got 10 seconds. So quick check, where are your watts now? And you know where you're going, 60% in 10 seconds. And up, just that little bit. Could only be 2 RPM. And back to where you started. Now we're at the top of number 2. We've got 5 of these to go. So settling back, your choice of cadence within that preferred cadence range, and 50–55% watts. Nice, even breathing. In 20 seconds, acceleration number 2. Again, you've got the luxury of being able to keep your body position in check. These little reminders now will become natural when you're outside. And up, that little RPM increase, find 60% with leg speed. And back to where you started. That's 2. Got 4 more to go. So it's just this tiny little shift, just a little bit of interest for your body as we stay in this active recovery work. If you've had the chance to monitor your heart rate throughout, that's a really good exercise in figuring out if you're tired, dehydrated, fatigued. And in 5 seconds, our third acceleration to 60%. 3, 2, 1. Bring it up. Land on 60%. 5 more seconds. And back to where you started. We're halfway through. So as you all know, you can have good days and bad days. The days when you show up for your workout or your ride, then you feel on fire, amazing. Like everything's in your court, you've eaten well, you've hydrated well, you slept well, you feel great. And then 2 days later, exact same situation, and you just don't feel it. And that is a function of much of our life around our training, not within. We've got 10 seconds till that next acceleration. And 3, 2, 1, leg speed up so you hit 60%. And 3, 2, 1, back it off. Got 2 more to go. So here you are, back at 50–55%, your preferred cadence. So it's these kind of numbers that really highlight what else we're doing in our lives. And of course, we're not expecting, no one should be expecting of themselves to be perfect all the time. It's just important to pay attention to the indicators and knowing when to back off a bit. Maybe your hard workout becomes this. And 10 seconds till our 5th acceleration. In 3, 2, 1, bring up that leg speed. Find 60% watts. 5 more seconds. 2, 1, back to where you started. 1 more time through. We're at the top of round 6. Nice and steady here. Nice steady breathing. In 20 seconds, our final acceleration to 60%, then we're going to come back right to 50% for the final 2 minutes. And 3, 2, 1, accelerate up. 60% watts. Final time here. 1. You can keep the leg speed wherever you like within that preferred cadence zone. Watts go to 50%. 2 minutes here as we wind down our zone 2 today, day 7. You may carry on like this for another half an hour if you like, another little while. Depends how interesting what you're listening to or watching is. This is a great way to catch up on some of the media you've been wanting to see. It's psychologically a lot more challenging to sit here in something that feels like you're not really working when physiologically it's doing so much good for your body. But it's tough, I get it. And 1 more minute. Carrying us through our 30 minutes today. In the coming zone 2 weeks and workouts, I'll tap into some of the other physiological ideas and training concepts around zone 2. There's so much to learn. So carrying on through here. Really settling that heart rate, settling that breath. Paying attention to that heart rate here. It should be still within that range, or at least you'll know what the upper end of your power zone 2 is, at least for today. And we can do 1 more minute here. And if you are out and about with your friends in the spring, riding outside, and your coach has said, this needs to be a zone 2 ride, when that group gets a little bit competitive or someone starts pushing the pace, you have to have the discipline to back it off, because it really changes what you are accomplishing. So you can always come back to this space here, remind yourself that this is super important. All right, that's it for day 7, zone 2. We'll see you tomorrow for some high intensity. We'll be back on the big hills. I look forward to that with you again.